I never thought I'd be the type of man who'd need to build a case against his own wife. But lies have a way of making even the most trusting person reach for evidence instead of explanations. My name is Jonathan Matthews, and I'm 38 years old. Each morning I wake before sunrise in my workshop turned sanctuary where I now sleep, surrounded by the tools that never lie to me. Marissa, my wife of 6 years, looked me straight in the eyes and denied everything, even with Troy's half-empty beer can still warm on our bedroom dresser. Troy Madden, her ex-convict lover with prison tattoos and a violent history, smirked from my side of the bed like he'd already won. My hands trembled, but I didn't lose control. Instead, I started collecting timestamps, text messages, receipts. The truth deserves proper documentation when someone works this hard to bury it. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I killed the engine of my Ford pickup and sat for a minute in the stillness, rolling my shoulders against the day's aches. It was nearly midnight. The garage had been slammed with 3 emergency repairs, and my hands were raw from wrenching on a stubborn transmission. Our driveway looked peaceful, bathed in moonlight. The porch light was on. Marissa always left it burning when I worked late. I thought about the weekend plans we'd made. Maybe a drive to the lake if the weather held. Maybe I could finally finish that cabinet she'd been asking about for months. Normal things. The kind of simple plans that steady people build their lives around. The smell of motor oil clung to my clothes as I trudged up the front steps. I remembered when Marissa used to say she didn't mind the scent, said it reminded her of how hard I worked. That was years ago, before the silences, before her smiles started looking rehearsed. I unlocked the door quietly, not wanting to wake her if she'd fallen asleep. The house was dim except for the soft glow from the hallway leading to our bedroom. I set my lunch cooler on the kitchen counter and noticed 2 wine glasses in the sink. One had a lipstick smudge, Marissa's shade of burgundy. Something prickled at the back of my neck. Marissa didn't drink alone. Not wine, anyway. I moved toward our bedroom, each step careful on the old hardwood floors that creaked if you didn't know exactly where to step. As I approached, I heard it. Muffled voices. Her voice whispering. And then a man's low rumble in response. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze, hand halfway to the doorknob. "He won't be home for hours," Marissa was saying, her voice a throaty murmur I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "You worry too much." A beer can clinked against wood. Then came a laugh, rough, arrogant. I knew that laugh. Troy Madden, her ex. The guy she swore was ancient history when we first started dating. The laugh that had terrorized me in high school when he was the dropout who hung around the parking lot. The laugh I'd heard in the background of threatening phone calls years later when Marissa first tried to leave him. The laugh of the man who'd spent 3 years in prison for assault with a deadly weapon. That laugh, now coming from my bedroom. Light spilled under the door, casting my shadow long behind me. I should have been smarter, should have called someone, should have recorded what I was hearing. But all I could feel was a wave of heat rising from my stomach to my throat. I pushed the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. Marissa jumped, clutching her silk robe closed at her throat. Troy, Jesus Christ, Troy Madden, sat on my side of the bed in jeans and no shirt, a beer can dangling from his tattooed fingers. The same prison tattoos I'd seen in the mugshot Marissa had shown me years ago, explaining why she had a restraining order against him. "Jonathan!" Marissa's voice went high with fake surprise. "You're home early." Troy didn't even stand, just took another swig of beer, his eyes calculating. "What the hell is this?" My voice sounded strange in my ears, too calm for the storm building inside me. "It's not what it looks like," Marissa said, the words tumbling out too fast. "Troy just stopped by to talk about some stuff he left with me years ago. We were just catching up." I stared at the unmade bed, at Troy's boots kicked off beside it, at the familiar way he leaned against my headboard. "Catching up?" I repeated. "In our bedroom. At midnight." "You're being paranoid," she snapped, her shock transforming instantly into irritation. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you he was stopping by. You always jump to conclusions." Jump to... I couldn't even finish the sentence. He's half naked in our bed, Marissa. Troy smirked. Man, calm down, we were just talking. He set his beer down on the nightstand, my father's antique nightstand, leaving a wet ring on the wood. Nothing happened, Marissa insisted, crossing her arms. God, you're making such drama out of this. If you weren't working such crazy hours all the time, maybe you wouldn't be so quick to assume the worst. The room seemed to tilt. She was turning this on me, actually trying to make this my fault. Are you serious right now? I stepped closer, my hands shaking. He's a convicted felon. Your abusive ex. The guy you told me threatened to kill you. And you're entertaining him in our bedroom while I'm at work? See what I mean? Marissa glanced at Troy, rolling her eyes like they shared some private understanding of my unreasonableness. Always so dramatic. Always making things into something they're not. Troy stood slowly, flexing his shoulders in what I recognized as a dominance display. You should listen to your wife, man. You need to calm down before you get yourself hurt. That threat, casual, practiced, ignited something in me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the voice recorder app, and set it on the dresser. Say it again, I challenged, my voice steadier than I felt. Tell me nothing happened. Tell me I'm crazy. Say it all for the record. Troy's eyes narrowed. Marissa's face drained of color. What are you doing? She demanded. Getting proof, I said. Since you're both so committed to gaslighting me. Troy grabbed his shirt, muttering curses. I'm out. This is bullshit. He shouldered past me hard enough that I staggered, the door frame catching my weight. Marissa turned on me the second we heard the front door slam. You ruined everything, she screamed, tears springing to her eyes on command. He needed my help and you humiliated him. Help? I shouted back, finally letting my voice match my fury. He's a felon, Marissa. What help could you possibly give him in our bedroom? You don't understand anything. She grabbed a pillow and hurled it at me. You think you know everything, but you don't know the first thing about him, about me, about us. Us. That word knocked the wind out of me. Get out, I said, voice dropping low. Get out of my sight before I say something we can't come back from. I walked out, grabbing my keys on the way. Behind me, Marissa was still screaming, her words becoming unintelligible as the front door closed between us. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The world outside was utterly still, peaceful, unchanged. In the window reflection, I stared at myself, a man realizing that the life he'd built so carefully had been hollowed out from the inside, leaving just the shell intact. I sat in my truck until the night air seeped into my bones. The dashboard clock read 1:27 a.m. My hands had stopped shaking, but my mind was racing, replaying every moment like a movie I couldn't pause. I grabbed my phone and opened the voice recorder app again. Thursday, April 8th. Time is 1:28 a.m., I said, keeping my voice steady. Just found Marissa with Troy Madden in our bedroom. He was half-dressed, beer can on my nightstand, bed unmade. When confronted, she claimed nothing happened and that I was being paranoid and making drama. Troy threatened me before leaving. Marissa claimed she was helping him. Used the phrase about us when referring to her relationship with him. I paused, taking a deep breath. She's lying. I know what I saw. I'm recording this for my own protection in case she tries to twist things later. I saved the audio file and then sat watching the house. The bedroom light stayed on for another 30 minutes. I saw Marissa's silhouette pass by the window several times. Around 2:00 a.m., the house went dark. I waited 15 more minutes before quietly letting myself inside. I avoided our bedroom, heading straight for the guest room instead. I locked the door behind me, something I'd never done before in my own home. I didn't sleep much that night, just stared at the ceiling, remembering how my dad once told me, the worst betrayals come from the people you least expect. He'd been talking about business partners. I never thought it would apply to my marriage. Morning came with the smell of coffee and bacon. I showered quickly in the guest bathroom and steeled myself before heading to the kitchen. Marissa stood at the counter in her favorite blue robe, humming while flipping pancakes, like nothing had happened, like last night was just a bad dream. Morning, she said brightly, sliding a plate toward me. Made your favorite. I stared at her, searching for some crack in the facade, some hint of guilt or shame. There was nothing. Are we going to talk about last night? I asked, not touching the food. Her smile faltered only slightly. What about last night? The question hit me like a slap. Troy, in our bedroom, the beer, the threats. Any of that ring a bell? She set down her spatula, expression shifting to concern. Jonathan, honey, I think you must have dreamed that up. You've been working so much lately, all those long hours at the garage, it's not healthy. I dreamed it up? My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. Marissa, I walked in on you two. I recorded part of it on my phone. Recorded what? She looked genuinely confused, which only made my stomach knot tighter. Jonathan, Troy stopped by for like 20 minutes around 8. We talked in the living room. He needed some closure about old stuff. He left before you even got home. That's not what happened. It is what happened. She touched my arm, her eyes wide and earnest. I'm worried about you. Maybe you should take a day off. Get some rest. I pulled away from her touch. My mind was spinning. Was she actually trying to convince me I'd imagined the whole thing? The beer can. I needed the beer can. I'm going to work, I said, keeping my voice neutral. We can talk about this later. She smiled, relieved. Good idea. You'll feel better after a normal day. I nodded, playing along while my eyes scanned the kitchen. The trash can was empty, freshly lined, of course. Before leaving, I casually walked through the living room, then doubled back to the bedroom as if forgetting something. The bed was perfectly made, the nightstand wiped clean. I took quick photos anyway, evidence of nothing except my own paranoia, according to Marissa's version of reality. On my way out, I spotted it, the beer can, buried in the recycling bin on the side of the house. I grabbed it, wrapped it in a shop rag, and stashed it under the seat of my truck. At work, I went through the motions, smiling at customers, diagnosing engine problems, all while feeling completely detached from reality. During my lunch break, I called Jill. I need to talk, I said when she answered. It's about Marissa. 40 minutes later, we sat at a corner table in a diner 3 blocks from my garage. I told her everything, the confrontation, Marissa's denial, the gaslighting this morning. Jill's face hardened as I spoke. That manipulative bitch, she muttered. She'd never liked Marissa much, but had kept her opinions mostly to herself out of respect for me. I don't know what to do, I admitted. She's trying to make me think I imagined the whole thing. You need legal advice, Jill said firmly. Before you do anything else, I know someone, Elena Alvarado. She's a family attorney, specializes in divorce, tough as nails. Divorce, I repeated, the word feeling strange in my mouth. Jonathan. Jill reached across the table and gripped my hand. This isn't a one-time thing. She brought her ex-convict boyfriend into your bed, then tried to convince you it didn't happen. What exactly are you trying to save here? She was right. I knew she was right. That evening, I sat alone in my garage, the door open to the darkening sky. Marissa's parking spot remained empty. No call, no text. Just the hollow certainty that she was with him again. I turned the beer can over in my hands. It was cheap stuff, a brand I never drank. Physical proof I wasn't losing my mind. If she thinks I'll roll over, I whispered to the empty driveway. She doesn't know me at all. Morning light streamed through the blinds of Ms. Alvarado's office as I shifted in the leather chair across from her desk. The space smelled of coffee and furniture polish, professional and calm, the complete opposite of how I felt inside. Mr. Matthews, I understand this is difficult, Ms. Alvarado said, adjusting her thin-rimmed glasses. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, not a strand out of place. But I need you to walk me through everything chronologically. I nodded, placing my phone in a small evidence bag on her desk. My wife Marissa has been having an affair with a man named Troy Madden. He's an ex-convict currently on parole for assault charges. Ms. Alvarado's expression remained neutral, but her pen moved quickly across her legal pad. And you have proof of this relationship? I caught them in our bedroom 2 nights ago. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I have a partial recording of the confrontation and this. I slid the evidence bag forward. It's the beer can he was drinking from. His fingerprints should be on it. She set down her pen. Mr. Matthews, Jonathan, before we continue, I want to be very clear about something. What matters in divorce proceedings isn't just what happened, but what can be proven. Emotions run high, but courts operate on evidence. I understand. Good. Now tell me what happened when you confronted them. I recounted the scene in detail, Troy's smirk, Marissa's immediate denial, the gaslighting that followed. And the next morning, she asked. She acted like it never happened, claimed Troy stopped by briefly in the living room for closure, and left before I got home. Ms. Alvarado nodded slowly. Classic gaslighting technique. They're testing how much you'll accept. She spent the next half hour asking precise questions about our finances, property, and marriage history. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping slightly. Here's my advice. Don't confront her again, at least not yet. Document everything. Keep your routines normal. Start separating finances quietly if possible. And Jonathan? Her eyes locked with mine. Do not leave your home no matter what. Abandonment can be used against you. I left her office with a folder of paperwork and a strange sense of calm. Having a plan, any plan, felt better than the chaos of the past 48 hours. The fluorescent lights of Mel's diner buzzed overhead as Jeff slid into the booth across from me. His face was lined with concern beneath his short beard. You look like hell, man, he said, signaling the waitress for coffee. Feel like it too. I rubbed my face, the stubble rough against my palms. Thanks for meeting me. Jeff had been my friend since high school. We'd worked side by side at the garage for years before he opened his own auto parts store. If there was anyone I could trust completely, it was him. So what's this emergency? He asked after ordering. I played him the recording from my confrontation with Marissa and Troy, keeping the volume low. Jeff's expression darkened. That son of a... He caught himself glancing around the diner. Is she still denying it? Completely? Acts like I imagined the whole thing. He shook his head in disgust. What did your lawyer say? Document everything. Don't tip my hand. Smart woman. Jeff leaned closer. You need timestamps, John. Concrete proof of where you are at all times. And you need eyes in that house when you're not there. Cameras. Nothing obvious. Small ones. And make sure your phone's location is always tracking. If she tries to claim you did something when you weren't even home, I hadn't thought of that. You think she would? Jeff's expression was grim. Men like Troy don't just back off, and women who lie once will lie again. The house was quiet when I returned home. Marissa sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She looked up with a tentative smile. Hey, she said softly. I made lasagna. Your favorite. I hung my keys on the hook, watching her carefully. Thanks. I thought maybe we could talk. She set her phone down. About us, about working things out. I played along, taking the seat across from her. What did you have in mind? I know things have been strained lately, with your long hours and everything. She reached for my hand. I let her take it even as my skin crawled. I just want us to get back to how we were. I nodded, noting how she avoided any mention of Troy or the confrontation. That would be nice. We ate dinner in a strange parody of normalcy. Marissa chatted about her day, asked about the garage, even suggested a weekend getaway to reconnect. I smiled and responded appropriately, all while cataloging each inconsistency, each careful omission. Later, as she showered, I slipped a small voice recorder under the dresser in our bedroom. The device was barely bigger than a USB drive. Jeff had given it to me after dinner, along with instructions on how to download the files. I lay awake for hours, pretending to sleep while Marissa breathed evenly beside me. Around midnight, the faint buzz of a phone vibrating pulled me from my half-slumber. Marissa slid out of bed, taking her phone to the bathroom. The door closed softly behind her. In the morning after she left for work, I retrieved the recorder. With shaking hands, I connected it to my laptop and played back the file. He's asleep. Marissa's whispered voice was crystal clear. You can come tomorrow. He'll be at the garage until at least 7. My stomach turned to ice. They were still planning meetings, still conspiring behind my back. And now I had proof. I woke before the alarm, the gray dawn barely filtering through the blinds. Sleep had been fitful at best. How could I rest knowing they were still plotting behind my back? My joints ached as I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Marissa. She was curled on her side, her breathing deep and even, a performance of innocence that made my jaw clench. The small recorder was right where I'd left it, tucked beneath the dresser. I pocketed it silently and headed downstairs. In the kitchen, I made coffee and waited for my laptop to boot up. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. A normal morning that wasn't normal at all. I plugged in the recorder with trembling fingers and downloaded the file. Marissa's hushed voice filled my headphones. "No, tomorrow night is perfect. He always works late on Wednesdays." A pause. Troy's muffled response on the other end of the call. "Of course, I'm sure. I'll text you when he leaves." Another pause. "I miss you too. Just one more night, then we'll figure something out." Something about hearing her plan it so casually, the timing, the deception, sent a chill through me that the hot coffee couldn't touch. My own wife, plotting to bring her ex-convict lover into our home the moment my back was turned. I remembered Detective Luis Ramos from church, a weathered, quiet man who'd helped several families in our congregation with domestic issues. He'd always struck me as fair-minded. I scrolled through my contacts and found his number from when he'd helped me with a customer's abandoned vehicle last year. "Matthews," he answered on the third ring, voice gruff but alert. "Been a while." "Detective Ramos," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need some advice. Off the record for now." "I'm listening." I laid it out for him. Marissa's affair with Troy Madden, the confrontation, the recordings, the continued deception. I explained what I knew about Troy's parole status. "If he's on parole for assault and weapons charges," Ramos said slowly, "then he's got restrictions, curfew, no alcohol, definitely no firearms. He was drinking beer in my house 2 nights ago. That's a violation, but it's your word against theirs unless you have evidence." "What kind of evidence do you need?" Ramos's voice lowered. "Photos of him with alcohol. Time-stamped footage showing him violating curfew. Any sign of weapons, even references to them in text messages." He paused. "But Matthews, be careful. Men like Madden are unpredictable. Don't confront him." "I won't," I promised. "I just want him out of my house, away from my wife. Document everything. Send it to me directly. I'll handle it quietly." After hanging up, I deleted the call from my phone's history. Upstairs, I heard Marissa stirring. I quickly closed the audio file and pulled up a parts inventory for the garage instead. "Morning," she said, appearing in the doorway in her robe. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I smiled tightly. "Big order coming in today." She poured coffee, seemingly relaxed. "Will you be late again?" "Probably," I replied, watching her face for signs of satisfaction. There it was, the faintest twitch of her lips. "These German imports take time. Don't work too hard," she said, kissing the top of my head before heading upstairs to shower. As soon as I heard the water running, I copied the audio files to a secure cloud folder and texted Jill. "Need to see you today. Important." Jill's kitchen smelled like fresh bread and coffee. Her son was at soccer practice, giving us privacy to talk. "A detective?" she asked, brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure that's necessary?" "Troy's violating parole, Jill. In my house. With my wife." My voice cracked slightly. "Ramos says with solid evidence we can get him off the streets without a messy confrontation." "And then what? Marissa just finds someone else?" "One problem at a time." I rubbed my temples. "Right now, I need Troy gone. He's dangerous." Jill reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Stay here tonight, please. You don't need to be there when he comes." I shook my head. "I have to finish what they started. Jonathan, I'll be careful. I'll stay in my truck. But I need pictures, Jill. Real proof." She sighed, knowing that stubborn look on my face. "Promise you'll call if anything happens." Dusk settled over our neighborhood as I parked a block away, angled toward our house. The dashboard clock read 8:45. I'd texted Marissa that I'd be working until at least 11. At 10:32, headlights appeared at the corner, quickly extinguished as the car rolled toward our driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs as I recognized Troy's beat-up Camaro. My camera clicked quietly as I captured him exiting the vehicle. Even from this distance, the six-pack of beer was clearly visible in his hand. He glanced around furtively before Marissa opened the door, pulling him inside. I zoomed in, taking several more photos as the front door closed. Within seconds, the bedroom light upstairs came on. I switched to video mode, recording the timestamp and narrating softly. Troy Madden entering my residence at 10:34 p.m., well past his 9 p.m. parole curfew, bringing alcohol. My hands shook as I attached the files to an email for Detective Ramos, adding the audio from last night. Subject line: Evidence of parole violation. Troy Madden. I hit send, then watched as Troy moved to the window upstairs, drawing the curtains closed. The bedroom, our bedroom, went dark except for the blue flicker of the TV. White-knuckled, I gripped the steering wheel, a curious calm replacing the rage. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt in control. The sunrise painted our kitchen in warm amber light as I returned from my early morning walk. Marissa stood at the counter, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, humming softly as she poured coffee into our matching mugs, the ones we'd bought during that weekend in Vermont when things were still good between us. I watched her for a moment, struck by how easily she slipped back into normalcy after what had happened. "Morning," she said, sliding a mug toward me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I made your favorite. Extra strong." I took the coffee without returning her smile. "Thanks. I was thinking we could try that new Italian place tonight," she continued, leaning against the counter. "It might be nice to get out, just the two of us." Just the two of us. As if Troy hadn't been in our bed last night. As if I hadn't photographed him entering our home past his parole curfew with alcohol in hand. "Marissa, we need to talk." I pulled out a kitchen chair. "Sit down, please." Her smile faltered, but she did as I asked, crossing her legs casually. "What's wrong?" I met her gaze directly, keeping my voice level. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air between us. For once, she didn't immediately respond. "I've given this a lot of thought," I continued. "We sell the house, split everything fairly, and walk away. You keep your SUV, I'll take mine. Clean break." Her surprise morphed into a bitter laugh. "Just like that? After 6 years?" "Just like that," I confirmed. "After what you've done, there's nothing left to save." Marissa leaned back in her chair, a calculating look replacing her shock. "Troy says you'll fold if I ask for alimony." The casual mention of his name, like he was her financial advisor rather than a convicted felon, made my stomach turn. "You're quoting a parolee for legal advice now?" "He knows more than you think," she countered, her voice hardening. "Maybe I'll tell the court you hit me." I kept my face perfectly still, though my heart hammered against my ribs. "Say it, and I'll press play on the recordings of Troy violating parole in this house. I'll show the judge your texts asking him to come over after curfew because Jonathan works late. I'll submit the photos I took of him entering our home last night at 10:34 p.m. with beer in his hands." Her eyes widened slightly. A flash of surprise she quickly tried to mask. "You're bluffing." "Check your phone," I said. "There should be a notification that I've emailed you some of the files. Not all of them, just enough so you understand what I have." She reached for her phone, tapping the screen. I watched her face pale as she opened the email containing a single audio clip, her voice whispering to Troy last night. "You've been spying on me," she hissed. "I've been protecting myself," I corrected her. "From both of you." Marissa's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this. You'll regret humiliating me." "I already regret the last 6 years," I replied, standing up. "I'm going to work. My lawyer will contact yours about the divorce papers." As I reached for the door, I paused, a cold realization washing over me. The quiet fury in her eyes told me everything. She was capable of far worse than I'd imagined. This wouldn't be a simple separation. It would be a war. Detective Ramos called just after 7 that evening. I was sitting in my truck outside Jeff's place, not yet ready to return home. "Matthews," his gravelly voice came through the speaker. "That evidence you sent was solid. Clear parole violations, curfew and alcohol. We're doing a surprise visit right now." My heart quickened. "Now? Tonight?" "Yep, standard procedure with parolees. If he's there, we've got cause to breathalyze him based on your documentation." I sat up straighter. "I'm not far. I can..." Stay back, Ramos warned. Let us handle this professionally. I'll call you afterward. 10 minutes later, I couldn't resist. I drove slowly past my house, keeping a distance. Blue lights flashed silently at the curb where a patrol car had parked. 2 officers stood talking to Troy, who had stepped out onto the sidewalk. His body language was defensive, hands gesturing wildly as one officer wrote something in a notepad. Marissa watched from our doorway, arms crossed tightly across her chest. I pulled over half a block away, engine running, and whispered to myself, "That's one piece down." The morning sun felt different somehow. Warmer, more promising. I stood in my kitchen sipping coffee when my phone vibrated. Detective Ramos. "Good news, Matthews," he said without preamble. "Madden failed the breathalyzer last night. Blew a .12. That's on top of the curfew violation." I exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from my chest. What happens now? His parole officer's been notified. They've taken him into custody pending a violation hearing. Ramos's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. That beer evidence you collected wasn't just circumstantial anymore. The alcohol was still in his system. "Thank you," I managed, my voice steadier than I expected, "for taking me seriously." "Justice works when the evidence is clear," Ramos replied. "Stay the course, Matthews. Document everything." After hanging up, I just stood there, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time in weeks. The house seemed quieter, cleaner somehow, knowing Troy wouldn't be sneaking back in. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marissa. "You did this." He needed a chance. "You ruined it." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to her that wouldn't be said through lawyers. Instead, I called Ms. Alvarado to update her on Troy's situation and went to work with a lighter step than I'd had in weeks. For 8 beautiful hours, I focused solely on engines, transmissions, and oil changes. Simple problems with logical solutions. The familiar smell of the garage, motor oil and rubber, brought back memories of working alongside my father, his patient hands guiding mine through my first repair. Those were simpler times, before marriage, before betrayal. I was just locking up when my phone rang again. Ms. Alvarado. "Jonathan." Her voice was tight, urgent. "Where are you right now?" "Just leaving the shop. What's wrong?" "Marissa filed for an emergency protective order this afternoon. She's claiming you threatened her with a wrench 2 days ago." My stomach dropped. "That's a lie. I was at work all day." "I know, but the judge granted it temporarily until the hearing. It's standard procedure when violence is alleged." Her tone shifted to pragmatic. "Officers will likely serve you tonight. You'll need to leave the house for at least 7 days until we can contest it." I gripped the phone tighter, knuckles white. "She's making this up. I have time cards proving." "Save it for the hearing," Ms. Alvarado cut in. "Go home, pack essentials, and leave calmly when they arrive. Do not argue with the officers. Do not engage with Marissa. We'll fight this the right way." Driving home, my mind raced with calculations. 2 days ago, I was at work from 7 a.m. until nearly 6 p.m., covered in grease from an engine rebuild. There was no way I could have threatened her with anything. She was lying, again, but now with the weight of the legal system temporarily behind her. They came at 9:17 p.m. 2 officers, professional and detached. I recognized one from Detective Ramos's precinct, but his eyes gave nothing away. "Mr. Matthews, we're serving you with this temporary protective order." The officer handed me the paperwork. "You'll need to vacate the premises for 7 days pending the hearing. You can take essential items only." I nodded, already prepared. "I understand." Marissa stood in the living room as I packed, arms folded tightly across her chest, playing the part of the frightened wife. Not a hair out of place, her eyes wide with manufactured fear. "Don't take my laptop," she said when I reached for it. "It's mine," I replied evenly. "Company property." The officers watched our exchange, their faces unreadable. I moved efficiently, grabbing clothes, toiletries, medication, and important documents. The entire process took less than 15 minutes. At the door, I paused and looked directly at Marissa. Her eyes flickered with something, not fear, but satisfaction. Victory. "You don't win by lying," I said quietly. "You just delay the truth." She flinched slightly but recovered with a trembling voice for the officer's benefit. "Please just go." Rain had started to fall as I loaded my duffel into the truck. The house I'd worked so hard to maintain, the life I'd built, temporarily beyond my reach because of a calculated lie. I drove straight to Jill's where the lights were already on. Jeff's truck sat in the driveway. She must have called him too. They were waiting with coffee and determined expressions when I walked in. "She locked you out of your own house?" Jeff's voice was incredulous. I dropped my bag and sank into a chair. "Temporary protective order. Claims I threatened her with a wrench 2 days ago." Jill placed a steaming mug in front of me. "When exactly did she say this happened?" "According to the paperwork, Tuesday around noon." I pulled out the order, pointing to the date and time. Jeff's eyebrows shot up. "Tuesday? You were elbow deep in the Henderson's Chevy transmission all day. We had lunch together at the shop." "I know," I nodded. "But it's her word against mine until the hearing." "Maybe not," Jill said slowly. "What about the security system? Doesn't it log when doors open and close?" I sat up straighter. "Yes, but she'd know that. She could say we were both home." Jeff snapped his fingers. "What about that Bluetooth speaker you installed in the garage? The one that records diagnostic clips when it detects loud noises?" My eyes widened. I fumbled for my phone, scrolling through the app. There it was, a 15-second clip recorded Tuesday at 12:17 p.m., precisely when Marissa claimed I was threatening her. I hit play, the sound of my garage door opening, then closing. A car engine starting. Marissa's voice. "He's at work until 6. We have plenty of time." My hand steadied as I played it again. Jeff and Jill leaned in, listening intently. "That's not just an alibi," I said, staring at my phone. "That's proof she's lying under oath." I woke before Jill's alarm, my neck stiff from a night on her couch. The sky outside was just starting to lighten, that murky blue before true dawn. Sleep had been fitful at best, my mind replaying Marissa's lies over and over. I crept to the kitchen to start coffee, careful not to wake my sister. By the time the pot finished brewing, headlights swept across the window. Jeff was early, just as I'd expected. Some friends disappear when trouble hits. Jeff drives toward it. "Morning," he whispered, stepping inside with a laptop bag and a box of donuts. "Thought we might need these." I smiled for the first time in days. "Coffee's ready." We settled at Jill's kitchen table, the house quiet except for the occasional creak of old floorboards. Jeff opened his laptop while I connected my phone to download the Bluetooth speaker data. "These diagnostic clips only record when there's a significant sound in the garage, right?" Jeff asked, pulling up the file directory. "Yeah. It's supposed to help troubleshoot potential break-ins or equipment failures." I sipped my coffee. 15 seconds max per recording. Jeff nodded, sorting the files by date and time. "Here we go. Tuesday, 12:17 p.m. He hit play, and the sound filled Jill's kitchen. The distinctive mechanical whir of my garage door opening, then closing, followed by a car engine starting. Then Marissa's voice, clear as day. "He's at work until 6. We have plenty of time." I felt a cold satisfaction. "Play it again." Jeff did, and this time I closed my eyes, concentrating on every sound. "That's her car," I said. "Listen to how it catches before turning over. It's always done that." Jeff was already scrolling through more files. "There's another one from later that day, 4:32 p.m. He clicked play. Muffled voices, then clearer as they entered the garage. "Marissa again. All you have to do is say he lost it. They always believe the calm ones flipped." Troy's voice followed. "And then what?" "Then they take him away and we don't have to sneak around anymore." The clip ended there, but it was enough. My stomach tightened into a knot. They'd been planning this, setting me up long before I confronted them. "Jesus," Jeff whispered. "They were going to frame you regardless." I stared at the screen, my hands perfectly still. "Pull up Monday and Wednesday, too." We found 3 more clips. One of Troy laughing about his parole officer being too stupid to catch on. Another of Marissa complaining about how I never lost my temper enough to give her a reason to leave. Footsteps on the stairs announced Jill's arrival. She stood in the doorway, hair disheveled from sleep, frowning at our expressions. "What did you find?" she asked. Jeff turned the laptop toward her. "The smoking gun." After listening to the clips, Jill didn't hesitate. "Call Ms. Alvarado, now." By 8:30, we were in Ms. Alvarado's office. She listened to each clip twice, taking meticulous notes, her expression growing more determined with each playback. "These are gold," she said finally. "But we need to establish chain of custody. I want these files secured with timestamps, metadata intact." She called in her assistant, who transferred everything to a secure drive while documenting each step. "We also need your work records," Ms. Alvarado continued. "Time cards, witness statements from co-workers, anything that proves you were at the garage when she claims you threatened her." I nodded. "I've got digital check-ins at 7:15 a.m. and 5:47 p.m., security cameras at the shop too." "Perfect." She tapped her pen against her notepad. "The hearing is tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. We'll be ready." By noon, we had assembled an airtight verification package. The audio files, my payroll records, signed statements from 2 co-workers, and security footage from the shop showing my truck in the parking lot all day Tuesday. I spent the afternoon and evening at Jill's kitchen table, rehearsing my testimony with Jeff playing the role of judge. Each time I started to let anger slip into my voice, he'd stop me. "Facts only," he'd remind me. "Cold, hard facts. Let the evidence speak for itself." After dinner, while Jeff went home to his own family, Jill sat with me on the porch. The night air carried the scent of coming rain. "You're going to win tomorrow," she said quietly. "I know." "And then what?" I watched a car pass on the darkened street. "Then I take back what's mine and finish this. Justice, not revenge," she reminded me. "Don't let this change who you are." I nodded, though we both knew something in me had already changed. Not broken, hardened. Later, as midnight approached, I lay awake on Jill's couch, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the final document we'd prepared. Affidavit of Jonathan Matthews. Completed, signed, notarized. My jaw tightened as I closed the computer. "Tomorrow," I muttered to the darkened room. "The lies die in daylight." Sunlight slanted through the tall courthouse windows, casting long rectangles across the polished floor as I walked beside Ms. Alvarado. My footsteps echoed in the marble hallway. The manila folder in my hands felt heavier than it should, weighted with truth. "Remember," Ms. Alvarado murmured, "let me do most of the talking. When you speak, just facts. No emotion." I nodded, adjusting my tie. Mom's voice echoed in my memory. "A man who dresses with respect gets respected." I'd chosen my navy suit, the one I wore to Dad's funeral, thinking how he would have handled this moment with the same quiet dignity I was trying to summon. Inside the courtroom, Marissa sat with her attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who shuffled papers nervously. She wore a cream-colored blouse I'd never seen before, hair pulled back in a way that emphasized vulnerability. When our eyes met briefly, she looked away, clutching her folder of documents like a shield. Detective Ramos sat near the front, dressed in a plain dark suit rather than his usual casual clothes. He gave me a slight nod as we passed. His presence wasn't required, but he'd come anyway, a silent witness to the truth he'd helped uncover. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Winters entered, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on. She nodded to the room before sitting. "Case number 47392, Matthews versus Matthews, Emergency Protective Order Review." Ms. Alvarado stood. "Elena Alvarado representing the respondent, Jonathan Matthews, Your Honor." Marissa's attorney introduced himself, voice slightly uncertain. The judge looked down at her notes. "I've reviewed the initial filing. Ms. Matthews claims her husband threatened her with physical violence using a wrench on Tuesday last week at approximately 7:30 a.m. Mr. Matthews denies these allegations." "We do more than deny, Your Honor," Ms. Alvarado replied. "We have conclusive proof these allegations were fabricated." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Ms. Alvarado methodically presented our evidence. The Bluetooth recordings with their authenticated timestamps, my work record showing I was miles away when the alleged threat occurred, and the Ring camera footage showing my truck leaving the driveway at 6:50 a.m. that morning. "Most significantly, Your Honor," she continued, "we have audio evidence of Mrs. Matthews conspiring with Troy Madden, a convicted felon currently in custody for parole violations, to fabricate these very allegations. The judge frowned. "Play the recording." The courtroom fell silent as Marissa's voice filled the room. "All you have to do is say he lost it. They always believe the calm ones flipped." I watched Marissa's face drain of color. Her attorney leaned toward her, whispering urgently. "Additionally, Ms. Alvarado continued, Mr. Matthews would like to address the court directly, if permitted." The judge nodded. "Mr. Matthews, you may speak." I stood, my heart hammering but my voice steady. "Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not here to create a spectacle or seek revenge. I'm here because I want peace and resolution. I've worked my entire adult life to build something honest and stable. When I discovered my wife's affair with Mr. Madden, I sought legal counsel and evidence, not confrontation. I never threatened anyone. I simply want to protect what I've built and move forward with my life." The judge studied me for a long moment, then turned to Marissa. "Mrs. Matthews, these recordings directly contradict your sworn statement." Marissa's attorney tried to intervene, claiming the recordings might be edited or taken out of context. The judge cut him off. "The timestamps and metadata have been verified by the court's technical advisor," she said flatly. "Mrs. Matthews, do you deny that is your voice on the recording?" Marissa stared at the table. "No, Your Honor." The judge's expression hardened. "Then I am dissolving this protective order immediately. Furthermore, I'm noting in the record that this appears to be a clear case of perjury, which I will refer to the district attorney's office for review." Ms. Alvarado wasn't finished. She requested exclusive possession of our home for me, along with control of all shared financial accounts. "Additionally," she added, "we're filing a claim for marital waste. Bank records show Mrs. Matthews has withdrawn over $12,000 in cash over the past 3 months, with no accounting for these funds. Text messages indicate these funds were provided to Mr. Madden, constituting dissipation of marital assets." The judge reviewed the bank statements, then delivered her verdict. No alimony, no shared ownership of the house, and court supervision of remaining assets until final divorce proceedings. I watched Marissa's face collapse under the weight of her own deceit. The careful mask of innocence crumbled, revealing what had always been there: calculation, not contrition. Outside in the sunshine, I took a deep breath, feeling like my lungs could finally expand fully. Ms. Alvarado shook my hand firmly. "You can return home today," she said. "The locks should be changed immediately." My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Ramos. "Madden sentenced. Firearm possession confirmed." 2 days after the court hearing, I stood in the living room of what used to be our home. Most of the furniture remained, but the space felt hollow, like a museum display of a life that no longer existed. The photos were gone from the walls, leaving lighter squares on the paint, markers of memories already fading. I heard the crunch of tires on the driveway and glanced at my watch. Right on time. Marissa had always been punctual when it mattered to her. The door opened without a knock. She'd kept her key, of course. I watched her step inside, dressed better than she had been in court. Designer jeans, a blouse I didn't recognize. Her hair was freshly done, always focused on appearances. "Jonathan," she said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in months. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded once, keeping my expression neutral. "Let's make this quick." She moved toward the couch, then seemed to think better of it and remained standing. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the half-packed boxes, the empty spaces where her decorative items had been. "You didn't have to take everything down so fast," she said. "I'm selling the house," I replied. "The realtor comes tomorrow." She flinched slightly. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." "That's been your problem all along," I said. "You never took me seriously." Marissa's shoulders slumped as she leaned against the wall. "I just wanted attention, Jonathan. You were always at the garage, always working. Troy made me feel—" "Stop," I cut her off. "I'm not interested in your justifications." "But I need you to understand," she pressed. "It wasn't about hurting you. I was lonely, and you destroyed us," I said, my voice level despite the fire in my chest. "You destroyed yourself, actually. I gave you every chance to be honest. Instead, you chose lies, manipulation, and false accusations. You destroyed us," she countered, though her voice wavered. "No," I replied. "You hired destruction. I sent it back with a return address. I walked to the kitchen counter and placed the settlement papers down, tapping them once. Everything's here. You get your clothes. The sedan. A small, court-approved stipend to help you relocate, that's it. Troy goes back to prison because of Troy. You walk away with nothing because you tried to make me a villain. Marissa stared at the papers, reality finally sinking in. There has to be something else we can... There isn't. I cut her off again. Sign them and leave. She took a hesitant step toward me, reaching for my arm. Jonathan. I stepped back. After the inciting incident, there's no redemption, Marissa. Not for you. Not in my life. Tears welled in her eyes, but I knew better now. Those tears had never been for me. They'd always been for her. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, voice catching. That's not my concern anymore, I said, walking to the front door and opening it. The afternoon light spilled across the threshold like an invitation to a new chapter. Your choices have consequences. These are yours. She cried then, real tears of loss and regret. But I felt nothing but a cold certainty. I'd loved her once. That man was gone. With trembling fingers, she signed the papers, gathered her purse, and walked past me without another word. I closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like the period at the end of a long, complicated sentence. 3 months later, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows in a house that was entirely my own. It was smaller than the old place, a 2-bedroom cottage with a yard just big enough for a grill and a porch swing. The morning light spilled across hardwood floors, casting golden rectangles that moved with the hours. I carried my coffee onto the porch, settling into the quiet rhythm I'd created. Saturdays meant coaching Jill's son's little league team. Sundays were for dinner with my mother. Weekdays belonged to the garage, which was doing better than ever since I'd hired 2 new mechanics. Peace had landed in my life like a bird that finally trusted my hand. The mail carrier waved as she passed, leaving a stack in my box. Among the bills and flyers was a letter marked, undeliverable, returned to sender. The return address was Troy Madden, State Correctional Facility. I smiled faintly, turning the unopened letter in my hands before dropping it in the trash can beside the porch steps. Justice served, I murmured, sipping my coffee as the morning sun warmed my face. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.